Top of the morning to you, and happy St. Patrick's Day. Welcome to 1 Million Cups. My name is Peter Hauk. I'm the community manager for the Zeal Center for Entrepreneurship. But more importantly, today I'm coming at you as a member of the 1 Million Cups organizing committee, live from the Pinnacle Productions studios in beautiful Sioux Falls, South Dakota. For those of you who don't know, 1 Million Cups is a program put on by the Kauffman Foundation, and it was started on the idea of what could happen if we all got together and had 1 million cups of coffee. What sort of ideas could be born, what partnerships could be established, what businesses could be launched, what jobs could be created. I've said this before, but I got my job working at the Zeal Center for Entrepreneurship in part because of my attendance of 1 Million Cups. So you never know what's going to happen when you get together on a Wednesday morning for a cup of coffee and a healthy dose of entrepreneurship. I'm very excited about today's presentation. We've got Walter Portz from Helen's Plan joining us today. But before we get to that, I'm going to give people who are new to 1 Million Cups and joining us here on Zoom the opportunity to introduce themselves. And if you don't feel comfortable introducing yourself via Zoom, feel free to drop your LinkedIn in the chat. I feel like that's the best way to network virtually. It's like a business card, but a lot more informative. So I'm going to give like a couple seconds here. I don't want to give too much dead air, but if someone wants to jump in and introduce themselves, you're welcome to do that now. Okay, I'm going to call it then. Next, we have our calendar of events. So each week we give the opportunity for people in the community who have an event going on to kind of talk a little bit about their event and let the public know about it. So if you have an event that's coming up, feel free to talk about that in the chat right now. Or not in the chat, like pop in live. Sorry. Matt Paulson.
Hey Peter, how are you?
I'm doing swell.
We have for Startup Sioux Falls and Zeal have an event coming up. We're going to do a morning marketing party. I believe it is on March 25th. We're going to do it on Zoom at 9:30 in the morning. And the way a morning marketing party works is everybody brings a marketing tip to the event and shares it. So, you know, Matt, this is something that worked for me. Maybe you can use it in your business. And by popular demand, I've been asked to speak about the Market Beat Burger and how that came to be and how we use that to kind of promote our business. So I'll be talking about that as my tip, and I look forward to hearing everyone else's marketing tip as well. If you want to sign up, startupsiouxfalls.com. There's a link to an Eventbrite that we'll put in the chat. And hope to see you guys there.
Thanks, Matt. Sadie Swear, is there anything going on in DTSF today? I saw you popped up.
There sure is going on. There's a lot going on in downtown Sioux Falls. Good morning and happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. There's a lot of fun things going on in downtown. And again, like Peter said, my name is Sadie Swear. I'm the community outreach coordinator at downtown Sioux Falls. And just a couple things happening. You know, if you're looking to extend your St. Patrick's Day celebrations, I know a lot of people celebrated last weekend or they're celebrating today. You know, you can do that with a couple brews during the brewery competition in Sioux Falls, which is called Mash Madness. And this weekend is the halftime buzzer event. And so you can come downtown the whole weekend from the 19th to the 21st. And instead of voting on the DTSF digital passport, which you can still do, we actually have paper scorecards. And so if you go around those 3 days, try those 5 specially brewed beers, you can be entered into a chance to win some really cool swag. So make sure to visit some breweries this weekend. For family fun, you can visit the Washington Pavilion for family game day. So imagine Price is Right, but with the family. And there'll be a lot of great activities and entertaining things to do 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Washington Pavilion. But please visit dtsf.com for all of these events and everything else that is going on. And happy St. Patrick's Day. Glad to be on.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, Sadie. Are there any other events that anybody wants to talk about?
So just a reminder that we're looking for high school and college students with business ideas to enter the I2I competition. The deadline is a week from today, and you can get more information at usd.edu/I2I.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Is that it? Going once? Going twice? All right. Well, we'll move on with our designated programming here. So I am pleased to introduce you to the one, the only Walter Portz of Helen's Plan. Walter is a name in Sioux Falls. You probably know him. If you don't, you should. He's a former member of the Zeal Center for Entrepreneurship. He's a current tenant of the Zeal Center for Entrepreneurship. He's a recent graduate of our accelerator program, and I'm very happy to be joined by him today to talk about his latest venture, which is Helen's Plan. Welcome, Walter. Thanks for joining us on 1 Million Cups this morning.
Thank you. That was incredibly enthusiastic. This whole St. Patty's Day thing he's got going on is quite amazing. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, so Walter, I'll give you the floor to talk a little bit about Helen's Plan for the people who don't know about it.
Sure, I appreciate that. So I'm just going to give you guys the journey that I'm on and open it up for questions after that. So about 3 years ago, well, let me back up a little further than that. About 5 years ago, I lost my father, and as a creative person and a photographer, I was able to create, and I made some fine art content that showed at the pavilion. I had this great grieving experience, and really found closure and everything through that process, and it was wonderful. Fast forward 2 years, my mom passed away kind of unexpectedly, and I was tasked with unwinding their estate. And you know, as a creative, organization isn't always my strong suit, so oftentimes I felt incredibly overwhelmed by that process. And about a year after she passed, I got her tax return documents from our attorney, or from our accountant. And as I went to sign it, I realized it had been a year since the date of her collapse, and it just all of a sudden, like a year's worth of grief all just smacked me all at once. And what I realized is that, you know, when you're in this process, you kind of put off everything else. And we as people need that closure and that grief and that time. But we've got so many responsibilities in our lives at this point that sometimes finding the time and energy to do that while you're still trying to get all of these tasks done is very difficult. So kind of coincidentally, I was driving back from Minneapolis, listening to a podcast about entrepreneurship, and all of a sudden these things started swirling in my head, and I was like, why are we still handling this like it's the 1950s? And, you know, I mean, my mom was super organized. Everything was in order, in a drawer. But when you lay it out, it's like, it's just completely overwhelming. And so I thought, why can't we build a system that allows people to input their information, much like the desk drawer, but then make it actionable on the back end so that we can actually help people one item at a time and help them organize their process. And really, you know, the goal is to eliminate some of those barriers to grief so that people can find more time for that clarity and more time for that grief. And so I started a journey. I see a couple familiar faces, people I've talked to about this before. But I started this journey of just talking to people saying, can I build something like this? What are the implications of building something like this? Who would use it? I did over 200 interviews or conversations, I guess, not really interviews, with people, discovering what their needs would be, discovering what their interests would be. And then after about 18 months of doing that, we decided to go ahead and build the product. And so about a year and a half ago, we started that process. And last May, we were able to launch our product into the world. And where we're at this point is we're still trying to figure out our perfect channels, working on several partnerships right now where we would either through HR part of a business or other businesses. So we've got HR professionals we're working with, investment advisors, pastors, just building relationships at this point, trying to find the right fits and get some people into a pilot program to figure out ways to commercialize this in a bigger fashion rather than me talking to one person at a time and saying, you need to do this. So that's where we're at. Chris and I, my partner, just finished the Co-Starters program, which was an amazing, it's just an amazing way to wrap your arms around the whole thing and really reflect on what you're doing right, what you need to be working on, and really was a fantastic program for us, and I think everybody involved in the program had a great experience. So we just came out of that. We've come out of that with a lot of new energy and a lot of new ideas, and really excited to see what the future brings for us.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So if anybody here has questions for Walter, feel free to drop them in the chat. If they're on Facebook, we'll see them too, so drop them there, please. But I'll kick us off here. Walter, so you do not necessarily have a background in tech, right? You've never developed a piece of software or an app before. You were a creative and a photographer by trade, right? So can you talk a little bit about the hurdle of trying to start a tech business?
Yeah, what the hell was I
as a
thinking?
creative? How do you even begin to tackle that problem?
So one of the things that I think I really pride myself on is like my ability to see big problems and to take a leap of faith towards solving them. And I'm not really, I guess I'm maybe naive to think this, but I'm not really afraid of a different industry, or completely getting outside of my box. In fact, it kind of is exciting, right?
Yeah.
Learn something entirely new, start to really understand new processes, meet new people, and really that's been exciting. I mean, I didn't do it for the excitement part, but it certainly has been quite an adventure to try and put it all together, find the right pieces to make it work, make sure you're doing all the things you need to be doing. And it's a learning process, I mean, nobody that starts out on a journey like this for the first time gets it all right.
Yeah.
You have to figure it out as you go along and be open for as much advice as you can possibly get from anybody who's willing to give it to you.
Yeah. And that's entrepreneurship, right? Like everyone thinks that entrepreneurs are these people who like they built a business and they must have known how to do that all from the get-go. But really, entrepreneurs are just a bunch of people who like throw themselves into a situation and figure it out as they go. And that's really what entrepreneurship is. And it's funny that you mentioned that you were kind of dealing with a problem that you had dealt with yourself, and identifying that problem and trying to solve it, because that's an age-old expression in the world of entrepreneurship is like called scratching your own itch, right? Like if you have a problem, other people probably have that problem too, and going out and trying to solve that problem is really kind of what entrepreneurship is all about. So that's really cool. I know this statistic personally. But I was thinking the other day when I was talking to you, the difference between having a piece of software like Helen's Plan and having no plan is a huge gap, right? Like maybe most people probably have some sort of plan. They might have a shoebox or a file cabinet or whatever. But having no plan, which is really the starkest contrast, is I can't even imagine what that would be like. So can you talk a little bit about how much time in man hours Helen's Plan can save you, what that time is spent doing when you are actually taking care of someone's estate through Helen's Plan? How does that look like? What's the user experience?
So let me give you a couple of pieces first. I'm going to back it up just a tad bit from where you were at. So my partner Chris, when he created his account, he got a good chunk of his information in less than an hour and a half. We just had this conversation. I was like, so how did you feel about it? And he's like, well, I just did this, this, and this, and I got the majority of it in an hour and a half. So that being said, so let's say you put 5 to 10 hours worth of work into this, and you kind of maintain it over the years. The average estate takes 580 hours to unwind. That's that's kind of anytime hours, right? Like it pollutes all parts of your life. That's work. Some of that's work hours. Some of that's dinner with family hours, right? Like you just have to deal with all of these things. And, our goal is, if we can take 30 to 60 hours off of that time, that's time for focus, that's time for clarity, that's time for family, that's time for work, that's time for grief. If we can take 100 hours off, even better. So it really, depending on what your personal circumstances are, you're talking about a substantial amount of your family's life that they can be focused on what they need to be, as opposed to the kind of overwhelming nature of this beast. Did that answer your question?
Well, yeah, it did. But so when someone say someone has loaded their information into Helen's Plan and then they pass away, and it's what is it called when you give someone in your family like access to your Helen's Plan account?
Yeah, you just share access with, you have different levels of access.
So say I'm the person who has access and someone who's given me that access passes away. Like, what does that look like in stark contrast to a shoebox?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What
Sure,
are
sure.
the actionable steps that you have to take as a,
So what we've created is essentially it rolls everything into a checklist. And there are a handful of items that you'll input initially that need to be priorities after someone dies. People that need to be contacted, immediate needs to be taken care of. Maybe you have some funeral arrangements that you've listed on there. The pastor at your church, all of these different things. They're immediate needs. And then everything else is kind of itemized by category, right? So you can just go through one item at a time, and it creates a checklist so you can mark it when it's done. When you build the account, you can share with multiple people with different levels of access. So if Peter, if you're dealing with the estate stuff, you've got full access. You can see everything that you need to see. But your sister or brother could have just view-only access, but they can see what you've accomplished. So they can see the checklist. If they have questions, it really adds some transparency so that they can see what's going on. And then from the checklist, we've got a lot of options where we can build out specifics on how to take care of this particular type of account, et cetera, et cetera. So really step-by-step guidance for people that are going through it.
Yeah.
Because, most of us have never done that before until you have to do it. And then, then you're just stuck in the middle of it.
And I know that like being the person in charge of managing an estate afterwards can feel super frustrating, especially if you're the only person. So that view-only access, I think, is not to be understated. Having the ability for like your siblings or your cousins or whatever to see where things are at and to like help you through that process, even if you're the one in charge of it. That's huge. That's a great feature.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really up to you and your family situation as to what the right combination is. I'm sure there are families where you wouldn't want that.
Yeah.
But the ability to provide it is really important, we think.
But if you're really close with like your neighbor, you
Yeah.
can give them whatever level of access they need. That's cool. We have a question from Facebook from Maureen Ohm. She says, "How actively is this product all being used at this time? I'm sure you'll keep improving it over time, but do you consider it complete right now, besides ongoing improvement?"
It definitely is. I would consider it an MVP product. It's ready to go. Most of everything that we wanted to put into it initially from a data input side is there. There definitely are projects that we want to add to it, other functionality. If you collect this information about yourself, there are many other ways that you could use it to benefit yourself. So those are things that we want to do. And there's kind of constant site improvement.
Yeah.
Obviously, I found something the other day and we had to go in and fix it. But as far as actively being used, fortunately, we don't have anybody that's using it that has passed away yet. And hopefully that's a long time before that needs to happen. But one of the partnerships we're looking at is working with nursing homes and like hospice care, in which case our product, it's like last minute, but still to be able to document stuff would be really handy. And so if we can get partnered with them, I think there's potential to really help people there too.
Yeah.
And that would be, in most cases, that would probably be something that we would give to those people as opposed to charging them for it, because we need to, there's part of a research part of that to make sure things work the way we want them to, and we really just want to help people.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's really something you should be planning for and building ahead of time, but in the case of the last minute, there is some value too.
So you mentioned that you just graduated from Co-Starters with a bunch of new ideas and a bunch of like a fresh outlook on your business. Can you talk a little bit about what the future of Helen's Plan looks like? What are your like immediate next? I know maybe you don't want to give away all the areas you're headed for, but
it's I think that building those relationships is really where we're at. We need to find a handful of partners that want to be kind of pilot programs so that we can get this rolled out in mass, whether that's to clients of a particular type of company or to employees or to a particular church or that sort of thing. Get it rolled out, get a bunch of people using it, and that will allow us to learn a little bit more about what people need and what's missing and how it works for people. We've got a base and we're constantly increasing our user base, but it would be nice to get one of those strategic partners in place so that we can really grow it and see how it works in those environments.
And this could be like an employee benefit, right? That's what you're talking about. So I own a company and I could buy Helen's plan for all of my employees so that they can take care of their own affairs or maybe the affairs of a parent or something.
Right. So what we're really doing when we're trying to focus on that particular perspective with an HR lens on it is that I wouldn't provide it. I think it wouldn't be best to just provide it for the employee, but the employee, and we kind of think of it like an umbrella of 6, right? So the employee, the spouse, and their parents. So any of them could sign up for this cost that we're building into it, which really gives you more functionality as far as an employer goes, because now if your employee loses somebody, their parent or something, and they have to deal with these things, you're helping your employee get through that. But also, the hope would be that it would offer increased productivity and kind of like give a healthier workspace for those people, so they would have less time away from work and less time focused on this stuff and more time, healing and doing the things they need to do.
Yeah, I think that's, you just hit on kind of a huge benefit of this as an employee benefit is like, so we're in an age where people are talking about, having a healthy company culture and actually being caring of your employees. And what better way to do that than to save them from, what was it, 538 hours or whatever?
580 hours.
580 hours of heartbreak and frustration all at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, if you can eliminate, 50 of that or 100 of that, like that'd be awesome.
Yeah,
right?
That's a big way to like look out for your employees that companies currently can't really, other than offering bereavement leave.
Right.
There's not a lot.
Which is usually 4 or 5 days, something like that. The other thing about this is like you get consumed by these things at work, and you don't know what to do with. I mean, even as simple as like closing a bank account for somebody who's died. Well, if you're not on the bank account, like you have to go through a step-by-step process, and it usually requires several trips to the bank. But if you were prepared ahead of time and had the right guidance, you would save trips to the bank, so you'd save missed work time.
Yeah.
All of that kind of trickles down.
So then you can use your bereavement leave to like actually grieve rather than spending all that time running back and forth to the bank. That's huge.
Yeah. And I think that, just from a mental health standpoint, Americans don't do the best job of grieving. There are a lot of religious traditions throughout the world where there's 7 to 10 days of grieving. There's all kinds of things that people do to really celebrate life and get through this the way they need to. And I think we need to bring some of that back. Like we've just got so many obstacles to it, whether it's our work life, our family life, all of this estate execution process. Like, what can we do to grieve healthy and really find mental clarity? Like for me, mental health is a big part of this.
Yeah, and it's important that we focus on that as a society, I think, and this is a great way to do that, and to enable your employees or your congregation or whatever to do that. We have a couple more questions here from the World Wide Web. Walter, do you plan or have you had conversations with attorneys that have established estate plans as well as served as probate attorney on an estate? What have they said about Helen's plan?
So I've had lots of those conversations, and there's a variety of interest. And one of the things you can do is actually input an executor. So you could assign your attorney as the executor, so they would have access to all of this stuff within Helen's plan. Every circumstance is very different. This is not a substitute for a will or a trust or anything like that. And if your estate is worth more than, in South Dakota, worth more than $50,000, it has to go through the court system, which is fine. This is a great partnership and a great resource for people that are going through that too. There are a lot of things that aren't included in typical like probate and that sort of thing that need to be handled as well. And Helen's plan allows for all of that, right? So it's really it's similar to your drawer full of documents, but it's organized and then it's actionable. So there are some things that an estate executor has to perform, and it has to go through the courts. And there are other items that you need to take care of, whether that's social media, dealing with social media accounts, email accounts, that sort of thing. So definitely have had those conversations, and for the most part, had really positive feedback from people that were in the trust and family law.
So it helps you detangle all of that, right? Like regardless of what the value of the estate is or what have you, like it helps you detangle all of these different things that you need to take care of, and that's huge. We have another question from Facebook, again from Marina Known. By the way, that last question was from Jeff Veldkamp. I forgot to say that. This new question is from Marina Known from Facebook. Do you have testimonials from customers who have filled everything out, especially someone with a complex estate?
We have a couple of testimonials on our site right now, and also recently got this great testimonial from Tova Hofborms.
Oh, yeah.
And she's an attorney, so I kind of trust her, but she's dealing with her parents' estate right now, still, because they passed away over the last 2 years, both of them, and or maybe 3 now. But anyway, she's still dealing with those estate issues, and so she signed up, and she's one of our biggest advocates now because she's dealing with that, and she's an attorney who thought she was organized. Well, now all of a sudden she's realizing like there's so much more to it than what you expect.
Yeah, and that 580 hours that you're talking about, that is just an average, right?
Right.
Like some estates are probably way more than that and take up way more time and stretch out years after the fact. And what a way to draw out that grief, you know what I mean? Like you just have to, you're focused on that every time, and it's not healthy grief. It's just like thinking about like,
And it hits you at times that you don't expect. The other number that comes to mind is the average estate takes 18 months to unwind. So typically, like that's pretty typical to be dealing with stuff even 15, 18 months out from when somebody passes. So that's something that really was interesting to me because I'm still dealing with stuff and it's been 3 years because there are a handful of weird little things, but
Turns out human lives are complex.
Right.
And previously there wasn't a great way to organize it, but now there is.
Yeah.
Next question we have from Matt Paulson says, tell us about your cybersecurity strategy. What are you doing to protect data that is uploaded to your platform?
So my first question about whether I could do this or not was, could we build a system that was secure? And my first call for that was to a friend by the name of Chris Wasmond, who does banking security, and he's like, oh, it's a great idea, and yes, we absolutely can do that. So I trust in Chris to help us carve out that strategy. But essentially, the way we've built the site, we're protecting data in multiple ways, and then we use SBS in Madison to do pen testing and make sure the site's secure. So we're following all of those protocols and making sure that everything is as secure as it can possibly be. And the way that Chris articulates it is that each account within Helen's plan is more secure than the average bank is. So I feel that's how comfortable I feel with it. Like I feel really comfortable putting everything in there. But also, in addition to that, if you aren't comfortable putting passwords and account numbers in there, you still need to articulate everything that you have going on. And there's a lot of things that you could put in there that really aren't a security issue, where you could put in, oh, I have bank accounts at this bank, and this bank. Here's my banker, and not put in those other access if you want to, but it still will help you organize all of those issues.
Right, the checklist is still there, and it allows you, because that's one I referenced it earlier. But if someone passes away and you are the person in charge of their estate and their spouse is gone too, and like they have no plans, like you don't even know where to look for a lot of that stuff. Yeah. You don't know where they have bank accounts and where they don't. You know, that sort of thing. So how do you even find what bank they're at, much less who their banker is?
Right.
So even just having the name and the name of the bank and the name of your banker is a huge benefit, because it takes away that initial like, hey, I'm the son of so and so, and I don't know, does he have a bank account at
we found one. So we found one like 2 months afterwards when we got a random bank statement. My mom had put aside some money for rainy day, and it was from a bank that she never banked at, and it was just a bizarre thing. It's like, where did this come from? Yeah. And not that it was a huge deal, but it was like, those things need to be articulated, and she just forgot to put it down or whatever, and here we are.
Wasn't in the shoebox,
Right.
If it's not in the shoebox, how do you know about it?
It doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. Let me see, where are we at? From Rick Altoff, he says, please describe the resource disciplines you have integrated into your services, and what are the costs?
Part of that I'm not sure.
I don't know what Rick. Rick's on the call here. Rick, can you ask your question live here? What do you mean by resource disciplines?
The resources as far as you have capped as far as resource people in the different disciplines that are necessary to bring this whole process together to allow the families to enjoy the grieving process and take a lot of this anxieties away as far as the legal side, realistic side, reality side.
So who are the partners that he's bringing to the table? Like, is he?
Because I would suspect there's funeral directors, there's counselors, there's bankers, there's attorneys, there's insurance agents, etc.
Accountants. Yep. All of those play a factor. So what we've done is designed a system that allows you to access kind of everything. You still will have to have, in the case of an estate that needs to go to probate, you still have to have an attorney to handle that. You still have to have an accountant to file the taxes. This is just allowing you access to all of the information. And as far as the cost goes, we've set up a subscription model. In the case of an individual buying it, it's $10 per person, or $100 annually, $10 per month or $100 annually. But in the case of the benefit solutions, it's entirely different cost structure depending on the size of the business or how many employees you have and all of that. So the cost varies depending, but for individuals, that's the cost that's involved.
And you had mentioned at one point, I know, the possibility of maybe white labeling your service down the road. So if if a financial institution or a financial advisory or something wanted to offer it to their employees or their customers or something, there's a potential for it to be white labeled.
Yep. There are different build outs that we can do depending on what the specific needs of that client are. So one would be a white label scenario. There are others where we can do different types of reporting and different types of input for their clients and build specific pages to front for them. So yeah, that's definitely part of the plan going forward, is to offer that as an option for people.
Awesome. I know we have other questions here. Mike Huber says another area of benefit would be potential disagreements amongst family members. Can you talk about that?
Well, first of all, I'm really glad to say that my sister and I had no issues in our estate matters. But no, so interestingly, that was something that came up with one of the first people I had conversations with, and his point was, we have a dad that none of our siblings even talk to. I'm the only one who will even talk to him, and I want him to have this so that when I have to deal with his estate, it's just clear and easy, and there's no room for fighting or anything. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for disagreement. I think the person who is the executor in many, many cases is often seen as like, what are they doing that's sneaky, or what are they doing that's shady? And I think most people who aren't the executor just don't realize like how overwhelming this is. Like you don't need to be asking why this hasn't gotten done yet, because there's a lot of stuff that needs to get done. So I think for me, that's a big part of the disagreements, is like people just don't understand what it takes to deal with an estate. So having the clarity of being able to see that checklist, see what they've accomplished, and having the evidence of what you've accomplished as an executor really would be helpful, as far as like transparency with other family members, so they can start to have a little empathy for what you're going through as the executor.
And it goes back to the view-only access that we talked about earlier. Like if you can see that stuff, what your sibling or your cousin or whatever is getting done about that estate.
Yeah.
So.
And also you can offer help, or there's different things you can do, knowing what's going on that maybe you wouldn't if it was just unclear.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Another question from Facebook, again from Maureen Ohm. She's hot with the questions. You said it's not a substitute for a will or a trust, but it is a substitute for an estate plan. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So I would consider it a supplemental for a will and trust. An estate plan can really run the gamut of a bunch of different things where you're talking about specifics that. So I wouldn't say it's an exact replacement for an estate plan, but because we're not talking about the specifics of where one thing needs to go versus another item, those sorts of things, which is kind of a broader estate plan. But this really, it covers a lot of the bases that an estate plan would. It also covers some bases that aren't in a lot of those estate plans, which, having to do with if you still have young children, school-related issues with their friends, like how do you communicate all of those items so that if you have to share that with somebody, it's all there. I guess it's akin to an estate plan, but it's not a comprehensive estate plan necessarily, because a lot of times those go further into detail.
Well, it's hard to compare it to something, right? Because nothing like this exists, right? Like there are estate plans and there are wills, but there isn't really a software like this that exists that helps in this particular area, and which is why we keep going back to the shoebox, right? Like the thing it is the most direct replacement for is an antiquated method of record keeping,
right?
Yeah,
and it very well could evolve to offering more of those estate planning tools that are outside of the box. But as of right now, it's really your shoebox, right? But then, in addition to that, it actually gives you help on the back end.
Yeah, it helps you take care of those other things. It brings it all together for sure. It's always tough when I got to look at a long list of questions. Question from Amelia Newth, I think is how you say your name, Amelia. I'm sorry if I butchered that. Is there an area to add a list of medications and medical conditions from the person that had passed? This is a need from law enforcement and paramedics on scene during the first immediate actions.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a big thing. So it's not only those things, but also you can scan and upload a DNR if you've got it, any other medical directives, so that, assuming a loved one is on site, they can pull that stuff up and, email it to the nurse's station. This isn't all post end of life, right? Like some of these utilities, some of these things could be utilized ahead of time. So in that case, they're having access to that information. With my mom's scenario, she had a DNR, but there was nobody there to tell them that, and so that wasn't what was done.
Yeah.
But this would allow access to all of that if somebody was there and had access to it. It depends on the scenario, but definitely all the medications are listed, medical conditions, medical histories. All that stuff is stuff you can personally identify yourself and share with the people you want to share it with. So we don't share it with anybody. It's your option to share it with loved ones.
You gotta love it when someone asks a question and it's just like, yes, just check.
Yeah.
Like already thought of that. We did it.
Yeah.
A question from Heather Hitterdahl. It feels like this would be a great idea for parents or other family members. Is it possible for someone to purchase a subscription but send it for someone else's use?
Kind of, yes. Well, a lot of people I feel like are going to use this with their folks or that sort of thing. At this point, because of the security protocols, they have to be involved in the initial sign up, but you certainly could sign them up and even fill out the data for them as if you set yourself up as a primary user. So that would be a way to get to that benefit. You could gift it to them, say, hey, we're giving you this. I need to help you sign up for it. If in the case of somebody who can't sign up for it themselves, but you definitely can pay for it and do all of that.
Yeah, awesome. I know that was one of my first questions that I asked you as well, because going through it, just making sure like that you can sign up for someone else or at least with someone else.
Yeah, so I would say you can't sign up for someone else. You can sign up with someone else.
That's a good way.
And that would be the best way to handle that. But yeah, I think that whether it's a gift or it's a gift both ways, right? Like, because you're giving this gift to your family if you fill it out for yourself. But definitely a lot of people are thinking about their folks. Aging parents is a big part of this, for sure.
I want to make sure that we're being respectful of our time. Okay, we're good. So one of the questions that I always ask as an audience member of 1 Million Cups that I sometimes forget to ask as the MC is about the jumping off point. So you were an entrepreneur before Helen's plan. You were doing other stuff before you started this. At what point, can you talk a little bit about the point that you decided, like, this is my full-time thing, or like this is my primary thing that I'm working on? What was the point at which you decided to do that?
Honestly, the moment I thought of it, I knew that it's what I needed to be doing. Once I got validation from 3 people, my friend who has an MBA from Johns Hopkins, Chris, the cybersecurity guy I talked about, and my brother-in-law who does venture lending in Silicon Valley. like talked to all three of them, said, is this a good idea? I knew I needed to be working on it. And then from every single conversation that I've had, with very few exceptions, I've known more that I need to be doing this. You know, this is really a project that is designed for me to help people, like for me to figure out a way to help people. And that's my passion for it. My passion is not for building the biggest company I can. My passion is for literally helping people and helping people not struggle through this, helping people find clarity, keeping people's mental state upbeat as best as possible. Like all of those things are important to me and really what's driving me. And honestly, like every conversation I've had, the people that are on here that have given me time, like all of you have made a difference in making this, and Peter probably more than anybody else on there. No offense to anybody on there, but Peter and I have a lot of conversations. But every time I talk to somebody, you know, it just encourages me more to just stay focused on that and keep the eyes on the prize. And you know what, if it's a 10-year project, it's a 10-year project. Like if it's a 20-year project, it's a 20-year project. But I need to be doing this.
It's a business born out of a real problem, right?
Yeah.
It's out of a real passion, out of something that you care a lot about.
Yeah.
You know, it's not you know, wholesaling something from Alibaba trying to like flip $1 or whatever. You know, it's you starting a business because you see a need that you honestly, genuinely want to address.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big component of entrepreneurship, right? Like no one else is gonna advocate for your business more than you, so you should care about the thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We have another question from Jason Honey of Trail Ridge. Is there plans in the future to make Helen's Plan an app? Where I'm going, sort of piggybacking on Amelia's question and what you just said, this is not needing to be post-mortem. If a person becomes incapacitated but has a smartphone with this app, it would make it easy to pull up and check for first responders, sort of like a new age medical bracelet.
I had not thought of that. That's a really, really great idea. We definitely have an app in our minds in the future. You know, we kind of felt like initially developing this that, you know, the data entry was going to be pretty heavy, so it should be web format, so that primarily because people are going to want to type information as opposed to entering it all on their phones. But we're finding that it's a healthier mix of mobile than we expected. So I would imagine that the app will be, you know, one of the next things that happens. But I love that idea, like to be able to integrate it with your phone and you know, if there's a way for first responders to pull that up in emergency or something like that, that would be amazing.
Especially being able to like view some of those things, right? Like here's like if you were say, I keep going back to the view only access. I don't know why I keep talking about
That's
that.
all right.
But that's like a very intriguing part to me. But like if you are the sibling or whatever, like you probably don't necessarily need to go into the website to do all that data entry. You just want to see where it's at. And so if there's an app that allows you to view, you know,
Yeah.
what's going on, like where is he at with that? You can scroll through and be like, oh, there it is. You know, that's the status of that. Cool.
Yep.
You know, and then go back to what you're doing or whatever. So, Heather Hitterdall says, thank you for sharing your grief journey with all of us. Your exhibit at the pavilion after your father's passing was beautiful and moving. That's lovely, Heather. Thank you for that. Joe Dorr says, as I've said before, Walter and Chris, this is a great idea. Congrats. What is your subscription price, and are there varying levels of Helen's Plan? We talked a little bit about the subscription price, but yeah, do you want to talk about if there are varying levels of membership?
Sure. At this point, we just have one level of membership. There has been discussion of a freemium model to get people engaged, but we haven't embraced that entirely yet. And the subscription cost is $10 a month or $100 annually. So depending on how you like to see or not see your bills every month, like you can put it away either way you want. And thank you, Heather, for watching that exhibit. It was a big deal to me and really important part of my journey. So I'm glad you got to see that. And Joe, thank you for the Joe was one of our co-starters, fellow classmates, and she's got an amazing idea as well. So
we've got a couple co-starters graduates here on the call. So thank you guys for joining. I just saw everyone last night, so it's good to see you all again this morning. They're good. They're all good people. So I like having them in our world.
Yeah.
So I don't see any more questions in the chat. So if you know, send them now if you want them. But otherwise, I'm gonna ask Walter our final question here that we always ask at 1 million cups. So going once, going twice, sold. Okay, Walter, what can we as the 1 million cups community do to help you at Helen's Plan?
Well, I think two things, if it's not too much to ask for two things. But if you or someone you know is at an age where this is an important topic, definitely talk about it. Well, more than that, even not just for me, make sure to talk about these things with your loved ones, regardless of whether you're going to do something like Helen's Plan. Like, don't be afraid to have conversations. That's something you can do for me. Secondly, if you have a business or entity that you think might be a great partner for a pilot program, get in touch, because I would love to have those conversations with anybody interested in kind of providing unique benefits for their employees that might have extra value. So both of those things.
Great. Well, thank you again, Walter,
Yeah.
for joining us this morning. It was
Thank you.
great to hear a little bit more about Helen's Plan. I think it's a great idea, and I've been excited to be kind of alongside you with this. I met you about the time that you started this, so I feel like I've been like walking right alongside of you.
You're watching me stumble when I stumble
Yeah.
and get it back up again.
It's been a cool experience for me being at Zeal for most of the life of Helen's Plan thus far, or at least from launch.
The public,
from
yeah.
The public side. I wasn't
that's
there
fair.
for the back end of it. But before we wrap up, I have a few things that I want to take care of here. One is talking about our upcoming speakers. So we have, today is Walter Portz. Next week, March 24th, we have Tyler Brockle of Trigger Interactive. And then we have Mark Stavanger of Severance Brewing Company. And then on April 7th, we have Brandon DeJong of the Hello High, which if you haven't been to the Hello High, go to the Hello High. That place is the coolest. I love that place a lot. Also, thank you very much to our sponsors, First National Bank in Sioux Falls, Market Beat, the Zeal Center for Entrepreneurship, where I work, so check us out. And also Pinnacle Productions, who has been adding an incredible amount of sizzle to our 1 Million Cups productions each week. We are very thankful to those guys, and we're in the studio right now live. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. We're halfway through. We'll see you next week. Boom.